What's up, guys? It's me, Guitar0183, and I'm back with something a little different, a review of Matt Reeves' The Batman. I know this video is way different to the things on this channel already, but it's something I've wanted to try my hand at for a while, so here we go. This is a spoiler-filled review. I will be talking about all aspects of the film, so if you don't want to be spoiled, watch the movie, then come back. As for a quick spoiler-free review, it's a fantastic film and feels way closer to what I consider a Batman story to be than any other film. Yes, even the Nolan trilogy. We'll get there. Robert Pattinson gives a mesmerizing performance as the Bat, and Paul Dano's interpretation of the Riddler blew me away. Bottom line, go see this movie. With all that out of the way, and one last reminder of spoilers, let's get into it.
Vengeance.
I'll be the first to admit I was totally wrong about this movie. When I saw the trailers, it looked just like another generic dime a dozen boilerplate DC flick. So my initial reaction was a heavy eye roll coupled with an abject disbelief when I saw the design for the Riddler.
Holy Jesus. What is that? What the fuck is that?
Anyone who knows me knows I'm a massive comic book fan, with Batman being my favourite superhero. I have the Justice League on my wall in my living room, so it should come as no surprise that I had such a visceral reaction to this interpretation of the Riddler, who I personally think is one of the more underrated of Batman's rogues gallery. Batman as a character is often boiled down to man in cape punch the bad guys, and to a certain extent that's true. People often forget that one of Batman's many monikers is the world's greatest detective, and the Riddler tests that title to the extreme. Looking at this, as a lifelong Batman fan, I thought, this isn't the Riddler. This is the Riddler. This is the Riddler. Hell, even this is the Riddler. Yes, I have an unironic love for the Adam West Batman show. Don't you at me.
You've got me, Batman. What the? It's too delicious. I even gave you a tip-off.
Batman, you've made a mistake. He didn't steal that cross.
What?
I tell you, it belongs to him. He lent it to me for a show.
But, Mr. Peel, we saw him take it from you at gunpoint. Gunpoint?
Holy ashtray, he did tip us off.
But this ain't the Riddler. This looks like an extra from the background of those BDSM club scenes in the Matrix movies. Now, as I said, that was my uninformed opinion, and I'm sure some of you will be expecting me to talk about Robert Edward Cullen Pattinson in the same vein, but to be honest, I thought I'd give him a chance. Twilight was over a decade ago at this point, and the man should be allowed to branch out and shed the stigma that role cast onto him, which, safe to say, he most certainly does in this film, but I'm getting ahead of myself. So, my reaction to the film was it'll kill an hour or two. I'll watch it when it comes to streaming. Then the movie started. The film opens by showing you just how awful Gotham City truly is. It's a town on the edge of anarchy where street gangs assault bystanders on trains, random shops get robbed without anyone stepping in to help, and drugs and violence are baked into the very concrete itself. Batman lets us know it's been 2 years since he began his one-man war on crime, and while he has been effective, he can't be everywhere. He relies on the power of fear to make criminals think twice about their actions. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. This is a Batman who hasn't reached the status of Dark Knight yet. He's not some legendary figure whose mere mention sends crooks scurrying back to their dens. He's a guy in a weird suit who takes the law into his own hands, and the scum of Gotham are far more likely to heap scorn on him than to run scared. Until, of course, he takes multiple bullets to the chest and keeps walking, disarms and breaks a gang leader's arm in one move, and tases a grunt into unconsciousness. Incidentally, Patterson's batsuit bears a striking similarity to the one from the Arkham series of video games. It's a series of armor plates over military black ops gear, and they really make you feel the weight of this thing. Loads of low-angle shots from boot level as Bat thuds towards his foes with the expected sound design to match. This thing is a mobile tank that can take explosions and point-blank shotgun blasts without missing a beat. This Batman isn't the leather-clad Avenger of '89 or the ninja assassin of the Nolan trilogy. He's a force of nature. You can't outrun him, your bullets won't stop him, and he will have his vengeance, in this life or the next. And to be honest, I kind of love it.
My name is Maximus Decimus Meridius.
Again, it takes much of its style from the Arkham games, which are some of my favourite games and the best superhero games of all time, but adds real lived-in weight to it. You get the sense that this is probably the first real iteration of the Batsuit in this world, and no doubt it will be improved upon, but for now it serves its purpose, and Bruce adapts a fighting style to match. Think military efficiency, you can almost see him analysing every fight scene down to the last detail. In fact, every Bat gadget seems like this. Function over form. The Batmobile is this hulking monster of a car that wouldn't look out of place screaming through the desert in Mad Max. It's not what I consider a Batmobile, but for this movie, it works. For the record, my favourite Batmobile design is the 90s animated Batmobile, and if this movie gets a sequel, please, please, Mr. Reeves, give Pat-Bat this car and make it shoot a grapnel so it can skid around tight corners, okay? Thanks. Sorry, I got sidetracked. The movie opens by showing the reality of living in Gotham, but we also get to see how the other half live as we pan over a palatial manor house with a small boy getting ready to go trick-or-treating with his mother while his wealthy father gets home. Thankfully, the film respects its audience by letting us know through voiceover that this is not Thomas and Martha Wayne, and we will not have to suffer through another retelling of their deaths. Seriously, at this point, the Waynes would rival Sean Bean for how many times they've died on screen. No, this is Mayor Don Mitchell. We watch him fret over losing his upcoming re-election before, in typical horror movie fashion, a masked psycho clubs him over the back of the head and beats him to death. Now, when this scene played out, I was still having reservations about the film, and I honestly thought they were going to play the Riddler off as just some thug with a penchant for puzzles. But then, Lieutenant James Gordon, Jeffrey Wright, in another fantastic performance. Seriously, I don't think I've ever seen anything with him in where he doesn't knock it out of the park. The Batman and the rest of the GCPD discover the aftermath of the crime. The former mayor's body has been duct taped to a chair in his office, his face covered and the thumb on his left hand removed. The murderer leaves a series of cryptic clues as well as a hand-drawn cipher for Batman to solve, and the story then expands into this epic, gritty crime thriller about a man trying to avenge his parents while the city they loved rots from the inside out. It was the end of this scene where this interpretation of the Riddler started to win me over. He's not the comic book Riddler. He's not the Arkhamverse Riddler. He's not even the Frank Gorshin Riddler. Instead, he's some amalgamation of every incarnation, including, weirdly enough, Jim Carrey's manic portrayal in one of my favourite guilty pleasure movies, Batman Forever. He sends Batman clues in the forms of various cards with riddles inside. Yet, these are much less campy than that film. He's what happens if you put the Batman comics, the Arkham games, Jigsaw, the Zodiac Killer, and a conspiracy survival nut in a blender. He's calculated terror, something that Batman can't just punch out and make go away. Hell, he even gets the Gotham public on his side by live streaming his exposure of the corruption inherent in the city. By the end of the film, he's gained an almost cult-like following ready to literally kill and die for him. Paul Dano is just electric here, and the writing is razor sharp. If you don't hold your breath in the bomb defusing scene, I don't know what to tell you. It absolutely works for this version of the story they're trying to tell, while staying true to the essence of the character. As for the rest of the cast, they're all stellar. Andy Serkis's Alfred is a world-weary mentor thrust into the role of a father figure, watching the last remaining connection to the two people he loved the most destroy himself on a misguided quest for vengeance. As with Batman, the film showcases Alfred's intellect more than any other, and while you understand that Mr. Pennyworth hates seeing his charge put on that suit, the two of them will spend equal time trying to solve the Riddler's clues. Zoe Kravitz's Catwoman is serviceable. She's seductive and playful when she needs to be and able to hold her own against Gotham's grimiest gangsters. But I found myself wishing she had a little more to do. It's like she's in her own movie that doesn't really gel with the noir thriller presented on screen. And to be honest, I found myself thinking I was rewatching Anne Hathaway's performance from The Dark Knight Rises, crossed with some pieces of Frank Miller's Year One and Grey Griffin's turn at the cat from the Arkham games. There's a lot of potential here, and as I said, Kravitz does her best with the material, even getting some moments to shine. The undercover club scene is great, but that's just how I feel. This might be a me issue, being absolutely drenched in the Batman lore as I am, and I'm sure a casual moviegoer would get a lot more from her. Now we move on to the villains, starting with Colin Farrell as the Penguin. And to put it simply, I didn't realise Colin Farrell was in this movie. He completely becomes Ozzy Cobblepot thanks to stellar makeup and a chameleon-like performance that reveals a warped mind under the thumb of John Turturro's Carmine Falcone. He bides his time as he presents the front of a legitimate club owner while in actuality operating a den of vice that keeps all of Gotham's most influential civil servants in his boss's pocket. Again, this is not the Penguin fans know, but the seeds are sown for him to grow into that figure. The Iceberg Lounge, the shady dealings, the lick spittle who knows just a little too much, it's all here, and I cannot wait to see this Penguin overrunning Gotham with illegal guns, drugs and gambling, all from atop his icy throne. At the end of the film, with Falcone dead, the audience knows Ozzy will be one of those ready to step into the power vacuum that the mob boss's death leaves the city in. I'm just waiting for the first time one of his henchmen calls him Ozzy and he reprimands them with a, "That's Mr. Cobblepot." John Turturro's Carmine Falcone feels as if he stepped right out of Jeff Loeb and Tim Sale's The Long Halloween. He's a man that holds the corrupt heart of Gotham in his hands and feels untouchable. Until Batman gets involved, of course. As an audience member, I had to remember that this world isn't the world from the comics. I'm not going to see Clayface or the Ventriloquist. Can we get a Ventriloquist movie, please? Or even Two-Face. But the potential is there. Reeves manages to balance the larger-than-life comic book aesthetic of the characters with a more grounded, real-world style that could transform into a far more interesting and unique film series than anything that has ever come before. On a side note, can DC stop trying to make all their films realistic? These ideas all come from larger-than-life comic book panels and word balloons. Please allow filmmakers to embrace that and add something more to a movie. I'd love to see a Swamp Thing movie faithful to Alan Moore's comic run, or a proper John Constantine movie. Sorry, Keanu, Matt Ryan is John Constantine. In terms of Batman, don't you want to see this?
Tonight I mean to pay back the man who ruined my life. Our lives.
Even if you have to kill everyone in the building to do it.
Think of it, Batman. To never again walk on a summer's day with a hot wind in your face and a warm hand to hold. Oh yes, I'd kill for that.
Or this?
Process. It's in me, Batman.
Or this?
You can play those roles again, Hagen. Let me help you find a cure. No! Hagen's gone! Make him stop haunting me!
In live action? I sure as hell do. Before we move on to Patterson himself, I'd like to touch on a character that I feel is often overlooked when discussing Batman media, and that's the City of Gotham itself. The Gotham of the comic books is not a real city, nor is it trying to be. It's a place beyond saving, somewhere in which the corrupt prey on the weak on a day-to-day, hour-by-hour basis. If Metropolis is the shining beacon of hope in the DC universe, then Gotham is its negative image, a place devoid of hope, where honesty, loyalty, and integrity will more than likely get you killed, while the morally bankrupt, sadistic, and violent thrive. Add to that larger-than-life villains like the Joker, and you have something closer to a gothic horror story than a superhero detective story. And that's something I feel most of the media outside of the comics gets wrong, especially the Nolan trilogy. Now, I know that I've lost a lot of you by saying that, so let me just preface what I'm about to say. I love the Nolan Batman movies. They're some of the most well-made films of all time. But as the series goes on, Gotham becomes less of a gothic horror meditation on crime and corruption, and more just, well, Chicago. It's too clean. Batman Begins felt grimy, rotten, and twisted, but by The Dark Knight Rises, it's all bridges, skyscrapers, and clean city skylines. In my view, Nolan's vision of a realistic Gotham was the wrong way to go about things. Batman and all his baggage are inherently ridiculous. It's a hyper-reality where every vice is turned up to 11, and a corrupting influence seems to seep from the very walls themselves. Gotham is a battlefield within which Batman cannot win. You can't fight crime as a concept any more than you can fight the air you breathe or the water you drink. Yet Batman tries anyway. He forces himself through this poisonous concrete jungle every night to protect and fight for the tiny glimmers of hope in the city, like Jim Gordon or Selina Kyle. Because if those small sparks of light still exist, even in the darkest of places, then his mission isn't a failure. Reeves understands this. His Gotham is a spider's web of dark alleys, crumbling buildings, corruption, and violence. He draws you into a world where the good and righteous rarely triumph, and even the residents with a moral compass must toe the line of immorality to survive. Even Bruce's father wasn't immune to the poison flowing through the streets. While Thomas Wayne was an upstanding citizen trying to become a beacon of light in the darkness and offer hope to the downtrodden, Falcone and others like him perverted the Wayne funds he left behind and used it to launder dirty money and secure their ill-gotten seats at the top of Gotham's warped hierarchy. By the end, despite Falcone being dead, you know that he's a symptom rather than the root cause. Bruce will need to do far more to purge the city of its dark influences. This is where Robert Pattinson's Bruce Wayne finds himself. Pattinson plays Batman as a bulwark against the darkness, a huge, intimidating presence that positions himself between the persecuted and their attackers. Batman will not waver, he will never surrender, and he will be the incorruptible force of justice that the city needs. This is in direct contrast to Pattinson's portrayal of Bruce Wayne. Pattinson's Wayne is a vengeful child, consumed by hatred not only for the criminal element that took his parents from him, but also at himself for being unable to protect them. It's an irrational dichotomy that drives him forward, and you really feel the weight and toll that his self-imposed mission takes on him. The only grounding force in his life is Andy Serkis's Alfred. If Gotham corrupts its citizens from without, then Bruce's pain is eating him from the inside out, with the only respite being when he puts on the cowl and prowls the city as Batman. Watching the movie, I got the feeling that this Bruce Wayne hasn't embraced the Bat as his true identity yet, but as time goes on and the weight of his mission grows ever larger, he will be forced to become that bulwark of strength, not just for Gotham, but for himself. I find it interesting that both Batman and Alfred take an explosion to the face in the movie, and while Batman takes the blast without complaint, it's only when Alfred is injured that Bruce is confronted with the reality of the situation. Seeing the man who raised him lying in a hospital bed as a direct result of his vendetta against crime thrusts the mission to the back of his thoughts. It allows that broken child to break through the surface of the dark armor he's cocooned himself in, and see that vengeance, while powerful, is not enough to fight the corrupting influence of Gotham and protect those he cares about. He must transcend vengeance to truly save the city. Thanks to Alfred reaffirming Bruce's faith in his father, he approaches the third act as a Batman filled with righteousness rather than vengeance, and that allows him to truly become a hero and embody the spirit of justice the audience has come to know. The Batman is a film about people discovering who they are, what lines they're willing to cross, and what their principles and convictions are truly worth. Reeves paints a picture of a city under siege from both internal and external forces, with naught but a handful of characters ready to stand up and hold back the chaos. This is a great film, and the series has a hell of a lot of potential, and I, for one, can't wait to see what's in store. Just, please, no more Joker-centric movies for a while. Thanks for watching. If anything I've rambled on about sounds interesting, then give the Batman a look and let me know what you thought down below. Check me out on Twitch. I stream at 9 PM British time every day except Saturday and Sunday. Join the Discord if you fancy. And please don't forget to...
Have a lovely day.